this tutorial, I will show you a new idea for creating extremely detailed explosions or volumes in Blender in real time. I will show you a completely procedural workflow and I will not use the default smoke simulation system. And this is a great news for many reasons. Real-time response, no waiting times, no bakings, all real-time. Small files, for example, this colossal explosion is taking only 1 megabyte of disk space, which is crazy because usually smoke simulations can take up to 60 gigabyte or more. You can literally model your explosion in real time. No bounds, no limits in the size, not to mention the insane level of detail which normally is very hard to achieve. By the way, consider joining my Patreon, in which you can find loads of interesting stuff. Alright, this tutorial can be done only in cycles. I'm gonna go under the light paths. We need a minimum volume bounces of 4. And then for the transparent bounces, at a minimum of 8 is recommended. If you have a powerful computer, I suggest to go higher like 16, and you can eventually want to increase also the total amount to something higher like 24. Now I'm gonna go all the way down under volumes. Ensure that both of these values are set on 1. If you have a very weak computer, you can set all of this to 2. That is gonna give you a faster render, but it will cost you a lower quality in the smoke. We don't need all of these max steps. I will decrease this to 256. Next, go all the way down, color management, expand it. I'm gonna change this from filmic to standard for having a nice contrast in the colors, especially during the fire tweaking that is gonna be essential. Next, I'm gonna go in the outliner here. If you click on this drop down menu, basically I want you to activate this camera icon here, not this one but this one here. And now you finally see that we have 4 icons. This is gonna be very helpful later. So I'm gonna start by deleting the light and the camera. From now on, it's very important that you stick with the values that I recommend to you, especially in the scale of everything. Ensure that you follow the tutorial strictly. Now, if you press N, you can pull out these side panels. The one in which I am interested is item, of course with the cube selected under the scale, and also we are interested in the dimensions. For the dimensions, I'm gonna manually put a width and length of 67. So for the height, for now, don't worry, we're gonna adjust it later. At this point, and only at this point, I'm gonna press Ctrl A and apply the scale. So you can see that the scale is set now on 67 meters for both the width and the length. I'm gonna move ahead and start modeling something that looks like a very rough shape of a nuclear explosion now. And so I'm gonna enter edit mode now. From now on, I'm not gonna go always here with the mouse because it's kind of slow. I will simply press tab on the keyboard and you can see that we are switching. Also for the mode, vertices, edges, faces, I'm gonna simply press 1, 2 or 3 on the keyboard. Select the top face. I'm gonna start by extruding the top face like this and scaling a little bit. Extrude it again, scale it down. Select the bottom face, which is this one here. Scale it a little bit down like this until we get some diagonal borders like this. Select the top face again and inset, not insect. And move the mouse, extrude down like this. Wireframe mode, activate the X-ray vision, G and Z, move it up so that it's not gonna intersect the ground. Scale it down a little bit so that we can kinda soften the angles. Press I for inset and insetting a face like this. Now I also want to create kinda a hole below the fireball, which is to me one of the best part about a nuke. Under view, focal length, I'm gonna decrease this to something more wide. Ctrl R here and put an edge loop and move it something around here like this. And at this point we can move the entire fireball all the way down without touching the column. So let's do this. In face mode, select this face, and then if you press on the keyboard Ctrl and numpad plus many times, we are expanding the selection basically like this. So you press G and Z. Yes, this is looking now like a gazebo, but it's actually a nuclear explosion. I swear. The shape should look like this in wireframe mode with X-ray vision. It's incredible, but this is more than enough for the geometry that we need for a super high detailed nuclear explosion. Modifiers and add modifier and subdivision surface. I'm gonna increase the levels viewport to something like 4. Right click and shade smooth. Shift A and add in a mesh plane. Scale it all the way up. If you are intersecting the floor a little bit, it's okay. Alright, let's adjust a little bit this shape until it becomes better, and I want a larger ground shockwave, like for example these edge loops. I want to pull it a little bit up like this. Now take in mind that the level of subdivision depends on your computer. Until working, I'm gonna leave this on 5, but for a nice result I'm gonna go literally higher than 5 later. Based on my test, I saw that I want to set the render values on 8. Which is crazy, but it's gonna give you a high level of details. Keep in mind that I intentionally have a very low poly mesh as a base mesh. If you turn off the subdivision, you see that we are basically working with just a cube extruded a few times in order to work in real-time speed later. When you are done modeling, you can enter edit mode, select all faces and press a Shift N to fix all the normals, just in case. Then I'm gonna go on vertex mode, in the menu mesh, clean up and choose merge by distance, so that we can fix eventual double vertices. So with the mouse in the middle here, I'm gonna right click, join areas, and next I'm gonna go with the mouse something around here until it becomes a double arrow, and right click and horizontal split. I want to put the line here, so from this icon change this to shader editor. I'm gonna press N to hide the side panel. We can stay in render preview now, also add a light. I'm gonna choose a sun. In the light settings here, we can choose a power of 9. I want to go in world settings and put the color of the world to a very dark black, rotating the light a little bit. If your 3D viewport is very slow, you can press Ctrl B and select a rectangle like this, speeding up the viewport, rendering just a portion. For deleting this rectangle selection, Ctrl Alt B. In the shader, I will delete the principled stuff. Press Shift A and search for principled volume. This one here. Plug the volume into the volume. Already starting to be some smoke. But we want to break this smoke a little bit using a noise texture and plug the factor into the density. I will change the noise type to 4D because the 4D noise has this additional value that is the W value. That is going to be helpful later for the animations. Now we can add a color ramp in order to control a little bit better this noise texture. If you move this black cursor, for example, you can see what is going on. We can change the type of color ramp from linear to B-spline in order to have a smoother transition. Also, with a math node in the middle of these two nodes, we can control the density of the smoke. So plug it here and change it to multiply. I can say to you that we can put this on 5.6. And the color ramp I will stay here, moving the white cursor close here. At this point, we also want to deform the geometry, so let's select these two nodes. Let's connect this same color ramp to the displacement of the material output. So apparently nothing is happening because we have to go in the material slot here, under settings, displacement. I'm gonna change this to displacement and bump. And boom. Now we are deforming the geometry. If you notice, the displacement shader is making it automatically for you. We can adjust it a little bit better using a displacement node, this one here, and plug it in here. But we have to change this line from normal to height. So if you try to tweak the scale, you can see what is going on now. The value that I want here is 1.05. The mid-level instead is deciding to put the displacement more inside or more outside. I'm gonna put a mid-level of 1.2. Now in the noise texture, we can increase the detail to the maximum, that is 15, and we can increase also the roughness to 0.8 for a better detail. And if you play with the scale a little bit, we are getting more details basically. I'm going to choose a scale of 42. Now, I want to control the noise texture using a separate object instead of trying to tweak it from here. That is very annoying. So here I'm going to create a simple cube like this, scale it up a little bit, and I'm going to call this cube coordinate smoke. Also, I'm going to turn off the visibility for the render, so this icon here only. And under object properties here, I'm going to turn off also the shadows because I want this cube to be as less disturbing as possible. So basically in the shader of the explosion, I'm going to add a texture coordinate node and enlarge it a little bit, and under the list here object, I'm going to choose my coordinates smoke cube, so we can connect the object into the vector. I'm going to make it very big. Don't apply the scale to this cube. When you move this cube, you are moving up or down also the small details of the smoke, and this is what we're going to do later. The exact scale for this cube is, for all these three values of the scale, is going to be 177. Don't worry about the dimension. Instead, the fact that it is so big is very disturbing, so we're going to scale it down down, but staying in edit mode. Pay attention, I am in edit mode. I select all the faces and scale the faces down. The sense of this is that we are preserving the scale value that is 177, like my experiment, but the cube is not very disturbing now because it's kind of small. So let's bring this cube close to the explosion so that we can see it. So this is the final version of the smoke shader for now, if you want to check it. Now we are getting a huge amount of little details, but the general shape of the explosion is too much regular, too much geometric. I wanted to kind of break up more this geometry, and we can do this using a displacement modifier. Go in the modifiers, and after the subdivision add a displace. We can go on solid view. So for the displacement modifier, I can already tell you that we can increase the strength to 3, and the mid-level instead is going to be on 0.178. Next, I'm going to click on new for having a new texture reference for the displacement, changing the coordinates to object. And so we need a new object like this cube. I'm going to duplicate this cube and put it apart like this. And just to don't get confused between these two cubes, I'm going to edit a little bit the shape like this. I'm going to rename this cube coordinates fire and big waves, so that from now on we will clearly see that this is the coordinate for the fire and big waves, and this is the coordinates object for the smoke. So let's go on tweaking the displacement modifier. As an object, I'm going to choose coordinates fire and big waves. Next, I'm going to go in the texture slot. As a type of texture, I'm going to choose clouds. And here, if you bring down the scale, you can see that we are kind of starting to have a more interesting shape. I am going to directly type 0.04. If you play the animation and try to move this, you can see that this is going in real time without any problem. 25 frames per second. So for now, to summarize, this cube will go slowly up in order to control the little details. And instead, the pyramid here is going to go down, controlling the big waves and the fire. But we're going to see this later. Now, just for curiosity, for just a few seconds, I want to see what happens with a level of 8 subdivision. We are already getting an insane level of detail in this smoke. Normally, this thing with a classic smoke simulation would require hours just for the bake and the tweakings and a lot of try and frustration. Instead, we are making this in just a few minutes, and this is mind-blowing. So now, of course, I'm going to decrease immediately the subdivision to 5 and go on working. If you enter edit mode, sometimes you may experience this bug of the black parts, like this ugly line at the bottom here. Sometimes can happen also here. You can see these kind of weird black parts. This is a very normal thing that can happen when you have too much tightened corners. So what you can do is to try to smooth these corners. For example, I take the bottom face of the explosion and let's activate the X-ray vision and basically try to put that face a little bit more down like this so that we can smooth the corners. Also here we can try our best to scaling some edge loops is a good idea to fix this problem. For example, this, if I scale it like this, it might help, and the black box is disappeared now. Also at the base you can see that the floor is kind of popping out from the smoke, so you might want to adjust a little bit the geometry. Next part, fire. So let's focus on the fireball. I'm gonna go in the material slot here. So this is material, I'm gonna call it smoke. If you click on this plus button on the right, we can kind of have a new material. And from the drop down list here, I'm gonna choose again the smoke, but I'm gonna click on this number in order to make a unique copy. So now this is unique. I'm gonna rename this fire. Ensure that you are working on the slot 2, that is the fire. So for the texture coordinate, I'm gonna delete this one from here, and instead, from the list, I'm gonna choose the coordinates fire and big waves. Now we need to assign this material to specific faces of this mesh. So we can do this. First of all, turn off the subdivision temporarily. I'm gonna stay in solid view now and turn off the X-ray vision. We can probably right click and shade flat temporarily so that we can clearly see the selection that we do. Enter edit mode, and in face mode select this and expand the selection with Control numpad plus until here. So I basically selected only the fireball. Next, I'm gonna go in the object data properties. Under vertex groups, I'm gonna click on this plus button and click on assign. So basically we have saved this selection. Exit from edit mode and let's go in the material section and click on the fire material. Actually, let's stay in edit mode, and with these faces selected, with the fire selected, I'm gonna click on assign. we finally isolated the fireball. I'm gonna reactivate the subdivision modifier. So in the shader for the fire, I'm gonna make a little bit of space here. I'm gonna have another color ramp down here, and we can connect the same noise texture to this color ramp. And basically my idea is to connect this color ramp to the emission strength, and finally changing this emission color to a good orange like this. Next, for this color ramp, I'm gonna invert the position of the white and the black cursor, and this is looking more realistic. And to control the power of the light of the fire, we can add a MAF node, plug it immediately after the color ramp. I'm gonna move this a little bit down. With these two nodes selected, I'm gonna press Ctrl J in order to frame them, and we can right click on this frame and rename it fire, so don't get confused. Alright, with this MAF node selected, I'm gonna change it to multiply. You are basically increasing the brightness of the fire. I'm gonna choose an exact value of 9.4. And now a very good idea in the color ramp of the fire is to add an additional cursor by clicking on this plus button. There is this new cursor in the middle. You can move it outside on the right like this. And for the color, I'm gonna click on the color and change it to a complete black color. And if you move this cursor close and close to the other black cursor. So I'm gonna put these three cursors exactly like this until I get a very nice, awesome looking fireball burning in the inside. Another good idea is to increase the multiply of this node here. Pay attention, not this one, but this one. I'm gonna increase this to 16. So for now, let's increase the subdivision and see what we get. So for now, the explosion is looking like this and is amazing with a level of 8 subdivision. This combination of nodes is giving to me that scattering look that I was never able to get properly in Blender. And actually is almost impossible to get with the default smoke simulation and volumes. Instead, with this system, it works just fine because it takes the height of the displacement as an input. Whenever you switch from edit mode to object mode, it looks like it's changing the shape. The reason for this is that the displacement modifier is not visible when you enter edit mode. If you want it to be visible also in edit mode, you can activate this icon here, but it's gonna be kind of difficult to edit the shape. So I'm gonna turn it off, and I want to have a larger column part in here because it's kind of too much thin. Alright, let's focus on animating everything now. So, in poor words, for the animation, the texture coordinate for the smoke is gonna go slowly up like this, moving all the small details up in the columns and in the ground shockwave. Instead, the texture coordinate for the fire is gonna go slowly down like this, generating a nice fireball rolling like this. And at the same time, in the shader for the fire only, for the noise texture, we're gonna animate also the W value. I suggested to you to animate the W value only of the noise texture of the fire, not also on the smoke, because otherwise it's gonna generate too much chaos. So let's start with this on frame 0, of course. In the noise texture, with the mouse over the W value, I'm gonna press I, so that we have inserted a keyframe. And now we can expand the timeline, and in the icon here, I can change the timeline to graph editor. So select this noise texture, is very important, otherwise you don't see it in the graph editor here. You can see, expand it from here and ensure that this channel is selected. With the mouse on the graph editor, if you press N, you can pull out this side menu, go on modifiers and give a generator modifier. This is basically automatically increasing this W value for us during the time. And we can increase the X value here. I'm gonna choose a very low value like 0.0001. When you press enter, this value apparently disappears, but if you re-click again on this number, you can see that is just hidden. So it's important to stay very low with this value because the W value animation is really changing a lot during time, very fast. Instead, with a very slow value like this, it works just fine. Next, I'm gonna select the texture coordinate object of the fire, and this is gonna go down, and so we're gonna add a generator in negative values. With the mouse in the 3D viewport, I'm gonna press I, adding a location keyframe. And then in the graph editor, we can expand everything here. So delete the X and the Y channel. We need just the Z location movement, which is the vertical direction basically. So with this Z location channel selected, in the modifiers add another generator, and as a value I'm gonna choose -0.03. If you try to play the animation, you see that this pyramid is going slowly down during time. So this movement down, in addition with the W value animation of the fire, is bringing us a perfect fire animation. Now we're gonna do the opposite for this texture coordinate object that is gonna go up. Let's copy and paste the generator from here. So select the pyramid, and in the generator modifier, I'm gonna click on this icon to copy this modifier, and then I'm gonna select this cube, and on frame 0 I'm gonna press I with the mouse here and inserting a location keyframe. Then in the graph editor, expand everything and delete the X and the Y channel, select the Z channel, and in the modifier panel we just need to click on paste. And finally, changing this X value to a positive value. Just delete the minus. This is going to be 0.03. Now, if you stay in solid view and try to play the animation, you can see that we have a nice deformation in the smoke, pyramid going down, and the cube is going slowly up. Alright, I made a low quality render test for you, and the first thing that I noticed is that we have a spikes problem. You can see all these little spikes. To fix this problem, simply decrease a little bit the scale of the displacement, and you can check what limit we can reach without sacrificing too much the detail. Unfortunately, we have to increase this level in order to see what's going on. So in this case, I want to stay on 0.8. And also it depends on how much the camera is close to this smoke. And remember to do the same also for the material of the fire. Okay, and we can lower down the subdivision. Finally, it's time to animate the general shape of the explosion. In poor words, I simply use the shape keys and a couple of keyframes in the scale, and eventually I will put that part in a second video. Everybody in the world can do shape keys or making a couple of keyframes in the scale. So you can decide to watch the part 2 if you need, or you can just go on working by yourself. As a last note, of course, this technique doesn't give you a realistic physics or all the bounces on the floor or walls that a smoke simulation can give you. But to me, all the good things that comes with this workflow are a big deal. So that's it for today. I can't wait to see what you get with this technique. Bye bye.